Um, Very good morning, everyone. We welcome you for today's session on evolving opportunities for distributed energy resources and battery energy storage systems in Asian cities. The session is organized by the Asia Leads Partnership in association with several partners. This is the agenda for today's session. We will have a quick introduction about the Asia Leads Partnership. Then we will move on to the technical presentations. We have Mr. Ranpal Singh from Tata Power, who will present on how do DERs impact the power system. Then we have Mr. Abhishek Ranjan from Renew Power Limited, who will present how can market instruments be better designed to promote DERs. Followed by which we have Mr. Nimish, who is Director of PwC India, who will present on the policy gaps and potential barriers to the large-scale proliferation of DERs. Finally, final presentation by Mr. Naveen Nagpal from BSES Rajdhani Power Limited, who will present on the lessons learned from integrating BES battery energy storage system in distribution network. And then we will have the open discussion where participants can ask questions to the speakers. This is the quick housekeeping rules for today. For most part of the session, participants will be in mute mode. We would like to keep the session interactive. Hence, please post your questions in the Q&A box at any point of the session. During open discussion, participants will get an opportunity to ask questions directly to the speakers. So to enable us to unmute, we request you to click raise the hand icon that you see at the bottom. Yes, so here's a quick introduction about the Asia Leads Partnership. Some of you might be aware, but we would like to give a very brief introduction about us. So the Asia Leads Partnership was launched in 2012. It's a voluntary regional network that supports low emission development strategies, NDCs, and other climate change goals for the Asian countries. We report to Global Climate Action Partnership. That's the global secretariat that was launched in 2011. We have other two regional secretariats such as Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean. This GCAP is hosted by National Renewable Energy Laboratory, supported by US Department of States. And this ALP Secretariat, it's hosted by ICLEI South Asia and other ICLEI regional offices from Asia. So it's a membership-based organization. We have close to 1,300 members. We also have 65 government agencies from 14 Asian countries part of this network. This is the map of membership. The services that we offer includes communities of practice, where we have several thematic communities of practice that supports in capacity building activities. I will show the communities of practice in the subsequent slides. We produce a lot of knowledge products in climate change related areas. We also promote the knowledge products and other materials by partners and other international participants, international organization for the benefit of our members. We do provide technical support on energy, climate finance, transport, and other key areas for the country governments in Asia, also the key organizations that are working for the country governments. Also, we do several networking events, including forums, technical sessions, etc. These are the different communities of practice run by us. I will not go into for detailed information, but just the names I would inform you. And those are energy, finance, subnational integration, clean mobility, and building energy efficiency. So from time to time, every year we take survey from the members and we identify priority areas. And we provide capacity building activities specific to those priority areas. So that's how we operate. And this specific session is organized under the energy communities of practice. So this year, these are the focus areas that we have prioritized, which includes increase the adoption of distributed energy resources, increase the integration of battery energy systems on the grid, and green hydrogen. So these are the members who are part of this community, 60 plus members from 11 countries. Basically, the government agencies are part of this network. If any of you are interested to join the membership of either Energy Corp or the ALP, you can follow this link. We will share the slides later. Through our network, we also provide several technical assistance to country governments. These are a list of technical assistance we provided in the recent past. I'm not going into the details, considering the time limitations. Another important aspect we would like to inform to the group is we also formed a leadership group for clean transport in Asia, where 9 countries in the Asia region came together and they work towards achieving net zero emission in transport sector. We also do provide several activities under this initiative to help countries achieve this goal. This is another important activity that is coming up in the in this year. In October, we are going to organize a forum where country governments will participate. So whatever the priority areas we have identified, similar to this session, we organize several sessions for the benefit of countries. We also do have technical sessions during this forum. Also, hands-on experiences we aim to provide through site visits and specific interaction with experts, all of which we aim to provide through the network. This is a short introduction about what we do. So before we move into the technical presentations, one of two words about this distributed energy resources to set the context. So DERs play a very key role in supporting countries transition to net zero. DERs are basically small scale energy resources situated near to the sites of electricity demand. They have a lot of advantages. It provides flexibility and resilience to energy system. Also, it avoids power losses, also money due to the transmission of electricity from centralized power plants. Those things are avoided. In several countries, DERs help to increase access to power supply. As more and more DERs are penetrating into the system, it provides a lot of new opportunities and challenges. As the market is maturing, we have to face both challenges and opportunities. In today's session, we have the market leader companies who work in DERs, who will share their experiences, lessons in adopting DERs. So we hope you will enjoy and learn from today's session. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our first technical speaker, Mr. Ranpal Singh, who is Group Head of Tata Power. He is an electrical engineer and he has more than 18 years of professional experience. With Tata Power Delhi Distribution Limited, he was associated for 12 years. He has played various roles related to solving core issues in power distribution through collaboration and co-development opportunities with technology partners. Also, he has participated in several academic research projects addressing key issues such as smart grid lab management and upgradation, battery test bed setup, etc. So recently, he has moved to Tata Power Mumbai for larger role, including innovation management and horizontal deployment across the organization. So we welcome Mr. Ranpal. Please take us through your presentation.
Yeah, right, Nandan. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I just wanted to make sure that.
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And then, first of all, thank you for introducing me. And good morning to everyone. I hope I'll be able to share the knowledge that is required, and I will be able to share the experience that we have gained with little experiments around the DER. So in today's presentation, I I have tried to keep it very crisp, and I would like to cover the small pilots, the live experience that we have gained from implementing these DR related initiatives. In the slides, basically, I have kind of divided it into 3-4 main sections. Naturally covering starting from the introduction of Tata Power. I will just give a brief snapshot and few figures. Then we'll move to the common discussion point around DER. Later on in the slides, I will then cover a few examples from our experience of implementation of various initiatives like integration of battery storage, then few projects related to DER. To just give you an idea, what are the how we implemented these things, what are the challenges we faced, etc. And then, of course, we'll conclude by summarizing all the activities. And I think this should be good enough to set the context and take the discussion forward. So just let me check if I'm able to move these slides. Abhinandan,
Yeah, now it's moving.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. So I mean, as I told, the first slide is basically covering the overall Tata Power overview, and here I have mentioned few figures. Currently, if you see on the left side, this is basic the snapshot of where we are, and on the right is kind of targets or goals where we want to move into. Currently, we are at the installed capacity of around 14 gigawatt. These are a bit old figure, which we must have kind of increased from where what have been mentioned here. But again, this is just to give an idea. So in generation, we are into thermal, hydro, and waste heat recoveries. Also, we are into renewables of generation from wind, generation from solar. Then there is solar manufacturing plants also, and there are other few things related to renewable. We are also in field of transmission and distribution. In terms of transmission, we have around 3,500 circuit kilometers, which we are operating and managing. And then in distribution, we combine, the cumulative customers that we have in India is around 12 million. So we are one of the largest integrated power supplier in India. So we, as you can see, we are mostly present in all parts of power verticals. And there are a few new areas that we are trying to venture into because, as you all know, that DR is the hot topic everywhere. It is disrupting the normal or normal operation of power grids and the utilities. So in the center, you can see that we are also now trying our presence, and we are trying to enter into new fields like EV charging, where we are setting up we are setting up chargers along the highways or at various locations across our nation. Then we are also into the rooftop solar, as I told that we also have a solar manufacturing plant. And we are also supporting agriculture initiatives through solar pumps, where we are supporting the agriculture community. Then for the consumers which are not, directly connected to the grids, we have also set up a different vertical. We could call it as Tata Power Renewable Microgrid, which operates in the field of renewable microgrids. And we have around 200 microgrids set up till now in various states of India, mostly in UP and Bihar. And then there's also area of interest to Tata Power is home automation, where we have a different product line attending to the needs of automation in home requirements. Like we have on the hardware part or the instrument part, there are smart switches which can help you to regulate to operate devices remotely, to basically schedule and manage your energy. So and there's also a software or application angle to it. There's a Easy Home named application that helps to operate all these things through internet or remotely. So these are few areas where we are trying to settle down, and rather we are leading in few areas already, like EV charging and microgrids, but we are trying to cover these new emerging areas also. And going forward we see ourselves with a portfolio mix, where the energy from renewable or clean energy would be around 75%. So all these initiatives are kind of leading to that, and I hope I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to manage this. So this was a brief around Tata Power. We'll now next move to general discussion. Of course, this is very common picture we see around the discussions in DER. So DER is affecting everybody. All stakeholders, right from the generator to the transmission and the power utilities. And of course, the regulator, the consumer, and the energy markets, everybody is being, touched upon. And there are a lot of activities happening around. It is kind of difficult to pinpoint which is, directly having a major impact, but mostly it is the distributed generation from renewable sources like solar or wind. And then there are a lot of ingress in terms of storage solutions, which are either directly connected to the grid or maybe behind meter applications. And there's on our national front, there's a lot of movement in terms of electric vehicle market. And to support that, there is there's immense push in the field of setting up charging stations for these upcoming EVs. So this gives you a kind of a picture that we are generally aware of, and that which gives you an idea that that's a lot of happening around the conventional way of working. And now the system is getting more distributed and democratic. So the control is earlier, the control was mostly with utilities, now which is kind of getting diluted. But again, these changes are bound to happen if we have to survive. Now we have to basically adapt ourselves to this. So taking this forward, I'll just give you a context how we every utility saw this happening around, and they were preparing themselves to get ready along this. And the ecosystem, which was earlier now we can say it is quite simple before the intervention of DER, because there were few stakeholders and there were quite controlled environment. But now a lot of things are happening. If on the left side, if you can see, there are a lot of initiatives, a lot of disruptions happening around the ecosystem. All stakeholders are being touched upon. There are EV policy at national level. Then there's solar expansion happening around, not only on the rooftop, but also related to the solar generation on large scale. There's also floating solar. there's a lot of activities are happening which encourage generation from the renewable sources. Then there's a natural growth of consumer, which is happening, I would say, more rapidly now, because we are, as you all know, now we have become the most populated country. So this is quite a, I mean, this is more than the normal growth. Then there are prosumers which are continuously increasing, which create the or makes the system so dynamic that you need lot of control, lot of management, lot of basically it increase the complexity of the system. Although these are then supported by technology advancements, there are n number of technology advancements happening in various fields, right? From, if we discuss about the data being generated by IoTs, then there's data management of through AI and machine learning. Then these data collected are leveraged to optimize and make system more stable and resilient. Of course, there's a lot of things happening around IoT, 5G, storage. I mean, you can name n number of things happening around. So, I mean, this is just a few things that I have listed, but all these collectively is making the ecosystem very dynamic. So around 2014, we started with a study that can help us to identify how we want to move forward in this direction. We collaborated with E3, which is a institute of USA, and there was a USTDA funded study that we did. So objective of the study was to basically plan things around DER, how we want to move ahead with DER. So a planning tool was developed, and then which could help us to evaluate the economic case of DER rollout. Then the other objective of the study was to evaluate DER portfolio, what we want to keep, what we want to prioritize, and that can be helping analyze the cost effectiveness of DER programs that we want to initiate. And of course, there's one more objective was related to development of the roadmap, how we want to go ahead with the DER, which technology, which aspect of the DER needs to be taken care. So all these concerns were studied, and a report was prepared before taking the, if I can say, taking the plunge. So that was the background, and maybe now I'll shift to few examples directly that we have kind of played with. And yeah, of course, the battery storage solution is one of them. So we have done few pilots, commercialized few things around the storage solution. We started with grid connected storage solution. This was installed in Tata Power Delhi area, and way back around 2018, and then it was integrated with our grid. So in this way, the partner AES and Mitsubishi was our partner, and this is basically lithium-ion chemistry, and the capacity is around 1000 megawatt. So now this has also been integrated with our SCADA system. So there's a dedicated group which we call as Power System Control Center, which operates and utilize this energy storage. Going forward, we I mean, from the experience that we gained, we also experimented and done a pilot at community level. We call it basically community level experiment or community level storage solution. But so this was installed this was installed with a distribution transformer, where we tried to address the overloading of transformer because of the space constraints. It was due for augmentation, so we tried this solution. It was a containerized solution, and it was done with Exide and Nextlanche. And this was connected to a 600 kVA, 630 kVA distribution transformer. And we had a basically preferred bus arrangement on the LT side, where we would be, we were able to supply load in case of disturbance in the power system. So we were able to supply load to the critical customers of this under this distribution transformer. And taking this forward, there has been few experiments around pole mounted storage also. Although this has not been completed yet, but of course we are quite close, and we have designed a pole mounted storage solution of around 20 kilowatt, which we are trying to install, or the purpose of this pole mounted storage would be to address the very localized solutions where you cannot upgrade or augment the complete network, so you can get it attended with help of this pole mounted storage. So these were the few experiments, or you can say the initiatives that we took around the distributed energy storage solution as part of gaining experience and attending to the dynamic or the changing environment of renewable integration. Going forward, maybe I would also give one more example where we tried urban islanding concept. So this was a European Union funded project where we tried to do a islanding concept in urban area. Although this was a very done at a very small scale. I mean, there was around 34 customers for which this experiment was performed, or for which this pilot was performed. So this was also done for a 630 kVA distribution transformer, and there were few solar, or you can say prosumers, attached to this network, and we have installed a smart transformer, a battery solution, and we finally integrated all these technologies and tested the capability of the system. We tested the feasibility of the system. We tried to gain experience how it will operate in case of let's say there's a power failure. So how will it will island itself from the main grid and operate and continue the supply to maintain the resilience of the system. So this has also been recently concluded in February last year, and we are quite hopeful to take this forward. Then there one more example I would like to quote here was related to DR response. So we also did a pilot around 2016 where we explored the automatic demand response aspect. We reached out to around 162 consumers, and we take them into confidence and we ask them to participate. Of course, this participation was volunteer based, and these are few figures related to that project. And after this project, so we gained a lot of experience, and we learned there were a lot of learning related to this pilot, which we have done with automatic demand response. And based on then, we tried to scale it up, and we are now moving into the field of behavioral demand response. I have one more slide related to this, where we have listed few learnings and how these learnings or the experience helped us to move to the aspect of behavioral demand response from automatic demand response. So this was a kind of a baby step in direction of demand response. Now we are you can say we are maturing into this activity, and we are gaining a lot of confidence in this. So here I have tried to summarize few of the learning. On the left side you can see. So few major learning points for us in ADR project was that we came to know that there are a lot of infrastructure in, issues. Somewhere routers were not working or data was not coming. There was communication issues. So all these, help us to identify where we need to put our money and what we need to upgrade. Then there were some issues or experience related to manual interventions. So although we took control of non-essential load of consumers, and with their consent only we operated the event or operated the demand response. But I mean, since these were commercial consumers, industrial consumers, so there were few cases where they have manual starters. So that also, so we have to manually intervene, otherwise it could not be operated remotely. So we also considered this as a very critical point in moving towards PTR. Third learning would be, I would say that awareness of consumer. This is very critical because ultimately they are participating into this and they volunteer into this. They need to know everything about it. And awareness sessions were also conducted, but I think the learning was that we need to engage with them more in more deep fashion, or there should be more one-to-one interactions. And lastly, there was alignment of the expectations, although our expectations were also a bit different from actual what happened on field, and customers' expectations were also different. So they asked very interesting questions, very unique questions, like how much we will gain, can I make a business out of this? I mean, there were a lot of good queries and quite interesting ones also. So based on all these learnings, we now we are piloting around the behavioral demand response, where we are reaching out to more than 4,000 consumers. And since we have worked upon the awareness also, so there's a good participation now. And we have in pilot, we have targeted, or we have actually shared the load of around 8 megawatts or 7.5 megawatt, and we are trying to scale it up in hundreds or up to the level of 150, 200 megawatt. Of course, there were a lot of activities done to engage these customers, like SMS, email, letters were sent, one-to-one interactions were held. So all these activities were done, and there was a lot of incentives that has been dispersed also. So these were the few I have. Although there are a lot of initiatives, a lot of pilots, or a lot of commercializations that we are doing, but this is again a learning stage for us. We do have committed small mistakes, and we have learned from it, and now we are improving ourselves continuously. So I think that's all I wanted to discuss with you briefly, and maybe I'll just check if this is the last slide. Abhinandan, I'm not able to move the slide.
You are able to move these slides. Yeah. Previous.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, that was the last slide. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Ranpal, for sharing the works from Tata Power, and also sharing the case examples on storage, urban islands, and other achievements, interactions with stakeholder. That was very insightful. Now we will move on to the next speaker. We have Abhishek Ranjan from he is Senior Vice President, Strategy and Head of Renew Power Private Limited. He has almost 2 decades of experience from power generation and distribution, as well as information technology sectors. He has extensive exposure to implementation of SCADA in power distribution utility, Further, he is well versed with day ahead and intraday power scheduling aspects, including demand forecast modeling for distribution utility. He also has rich experience to tariff formulation, techno-commercial analysis, preparation of detailed project reports for power generation and distribution projects. He manages over 1 billion power portfolio for BSES New Delhi, one of the largest private discoms in India. So without further ado, we would like to invite Mr. Abhishek to render his presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Anandan. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, very much.
Okay. And will I be able to move the slides?
Yes.
I mean, I should use the mouse, or how should I can't move.
You can either use mouse or the arrows, up and down arrows.
Okay, I'm pressing the arrows. It's not happening something.
Okay. Ritvik, you can give screen sharing control to him.
Yeah.
Okay,
Now,
it's moving now.
yeah. Thanks. So thanks everyone, and good morning, and from wherever you are, good evening if you are joining from Far East. And my name is Abhishek. Currently, I was working with BSES earlier and managed a large portfolio, as Mr. Anandan was saying, and I did a lot of work in distributed energy resources implementation in the area in the city of Delhi. And my colleague, the previous colleague, Tata from Tata, he mentioned about a lot of initiatives which were taken. So Delhi indeed has been at forefront of taking much of the initiatives in the DER space. And now what I'll do is I'll move on towards more of regulatory and market perspective, where the POCs have been done and what changes have been done to mainstream the DERs. The POCs are okay, but they need to be mainstreamed. And we'll also touch upon the concepts of DSO, which is now already there in the regulation, like Grid Code of India, which has been recently notified. And apart from that, various other regulations, which talks about DSO. The time has now come to mainstream the DER, just like any other resource which is being put to service. This is how we're going to do a quick recap of what DER is all about. My previous colleague has mentioned some of the practical case studies. We will talk about that. And what are in one slide, we'll talk about barriers. I understand my colleague from PwC is going to talk about in details about that. Focus on regulatory perspective and then transition to the local markets. In fact, I had a chance to collaborate with several of my US counterparts and Indian academic institutes under a UISS project, Joint Indo-US Collaboration Project, where we had recently developed a paper on TSO-DSO coordination, and that lays the blueprint for local energy markets and what shape and size it will take. So we'll focus on that, and we'll talk about briefly P2P, how it is happening. And in fact, in one of the sessions at Asia Clean Energy Forum in Manila in 2019, I was pleased to understand and see that countries like Malaysia and Thailand, they are much advanced and doing great job in the area of P2P trading. Okay, distributed rooftop solar engaged in the P2P trading. And in India, in Delhi also, we have done a couple of pilot starters. They have done in BSES, we have done something, and now regulations which are moving in that direction. So these are the DERs, as we all know. Like you have rooftop solar and small PV, small wind also. Then battery, it could be behind the meter or in front of the meters, like pole mounted or at the ground mounted in the distribution transformer and the power transformer area, which is embedded in the low voltage and the medium voltage grid. EVs, which is sector coupling for transportation, becoming very, very important in India. As we know, 70% of the vehicular population is in two-wheeler space in India, and especially Delhi is leading in EV or mobility transition, especially in terms of facilitation, in terms of the very robust EV policy, electric vehicle policy. In fact, in my previous stint in Delhi Discom, we had a chance to implement the single window scheme for EV charging. So that is now coming to fruition over 2 years now, almost 2 years now. So the target is to have all the new EV sales to be 25% by 2024, that is next year. And that is going to be surpassed, the numbers we are seeing today also. Okay, and then you have demand response. So demand response, my previous colleague was talking about, and this is very important, behavioral demand response and automated demand response. In fact, we conducted behavioral energy efficiency program as well, supported by USTDA in New Delhi, the first of its kind in India. How to integrate them? Smart devices, make the present devices smart, how to make them smart, and that's what we did. Now the idea is to mainstream them and see them as a distributed energy resource, which can be a part of the resource adequacy platform of the DSOs, transition to the DSOs. Power to heat and power to cooling, basically. Cooling load, automated cooling, smart cooling is the other area, because these tropical countries like us, cooling is a very important aspect. In summers, it almost forms about 50% of the total load. What are the technical barriers and the regulatory and commercial barriers, which I have tried to list out over here? So nobody knows how much distributed energy resources can be hosted in the present distribution grid. I mean, very few studies have been done. For example, in Delhi, we had done some study about 5-6 years ago with support of German think tanks. And what could be the quantum and size of the rooftop solar PV which can be implemented in the distribution grid without any thermal upgrades or without upgrading the distribution network? And that was a very fantastic study, which is still being followed today, the results, along with the concurrence of the Honorable Commission here in New Delhi. So this is very important. The telemetry metering becomes other aspects. So how do you telemeter them? Real-time, awareness, situational awareness. My colleague was talking about DERMS Flex solution. So that is a very good solution by one of the leading startups, I would say, or established company in California. But then the idea is how to telemeter and metering. So communication standards, smart meters, and the communication bandwidth become very, very important, robust, and very robust and very high uptime. Now, the people don't know what to do and when to do and what is DER, how to treat them, how to handle them. So that capacity building becomes very important. The last but not the least, the technical standards specified by regulator, I mean, yet to be. In India, we are talking about IEEE 1547-2018. Also, we have talked about OpenADR. The Bureau of Indian Standards is in process of notifying these and accepting them as a study. And I understand in places like US also, the experiments are on to verify whether IEEE 1547-2018 can work on, be accepted as a complete technical standard for DER related things, everything, integration with the grid. Lack of proper definition of the DER in the grid codes was one of the very important issue. Now, to some extent, it has been, coped up. In the Federal Grid Code of India, they have talked about DSO, the resource adequacy, demand side. And that is one indication we are moving in the right direction in India. But then the state grid codes also need to identify what are the DERs, the things I mentioned in the previous slide. DISCOMs, the DSOs or the DISCOMs in India, they view the rooftop solar, which is a very important DER, distributed energy resource, as a competition. So, and that is one of the basic barrier why it is not flourishing in our country. Though, despite the facts that the DISCOMs like in Delhi or Gujarat, etc., they are taking a lot of steps. And system integrators and OEMs like Tata Solar, they are also doing a lot of job, but then a lot of resistance is coming in. So there is a need to look into the business models, and that's what I will talk about today. There is a lack of market mechanism for the DER, and that is what I'll stress upon. These are some of the benefits. In the interest of time, I will skip that, but it only tells you that the DER both have a power advantage, that is content advantage for the DSOs, as well as the carriage or the network advantage as well. And not to forget, this is anyway beneficial for the end consumers, and we'll see how. Now, these are some of the benefits, challenges, and opportunities. So, for example, rooftop solar embedded within the distribution grid is providing a lot of peak shaving and power purchase cost optimization benefits, network congestion relief, network upgrade deferral, especially if you integrate or club solar with a battery storage, microgrid kind of applications within the grid. So grid connected microgrid. That's what one of the experiments we did in Delhi in my previous stint, where the solar battery storage and the distributed EV charging was also integrated in a single place while connected with the grid, providing support to the grid. reactive and power and voltage control, avoidance of POC and STU losses. Why? Because you are producing at the demand center. So therefore, the transmission loss and charges are avoided. And of course, renewable purchase obligation, that is one of the obligations in India. You have to procure certain quantum from green sources only. That is being there. The challenge are integration with the grid, the lack of viable funding options, capex, opex, etc. Payment security mechanism is not there. What are the opportunities here? So now what I was talking about is utilize the RTS PV for just transition of low consumption, low income category consumers and retail tariff reforms. The DERs would be used for this, and the latest draft solar policy in Delhi is very vocal about these parameters. Just to have a recap, this is an overview of a distributed system operator, where in the control room, the system operator has a complete real-time updates of what is happening on the millions of distributed energy resources, which are solar PV or EV charging chargers or electric vehicles sitting over there, battery swappers, even the demand response, etc. What is happening to them, while also having the upstream awareness. Like, for example, what is the status of the transmission? What is the status of the generation which is happening outside the grid, distribution grid? So the area or the scope of a DSO is getting more and more complex. The current discoms need to transition to DSO, and the models need to be coming up to enable more and more DER penetration. Okay. Now, this is one of the examples, like where the situational awareness, like this is 11 kV bus here, and this is a 23 by 11 kV transformer. And then these are the distribution transformers, 11 kV by 413 volts. And these are some of the loads, and I hope you are able to see my mouse movement. So these are some of the loads, as well as DERs like rooftop solar, heat pumps, battery storage, etc., which are connected. So the idea is, in real time, the situational awareness should be known to the distributed energy resource management system of the DISCOM or a DSO, and it should be able to focus them and manage the local grid through dispatching DERs. And that is where we are looking for. So all these pilots, which have been talked about my previous colleague, would be very important in actually validating the same on the ground. But then now the idea is to play that orchestra. So these are some of the tits and bits which is happening. But how to, do that in a very synchronized fashion, in an automated fashion, just like the system load dispatch is being done at a high voltage level, at a country level or a state level. So how do you do that within the grid, managing multiple virtual power plants? So this is what is happening today. For example, today the unidirectional flow of the electricity from the TSO to the DSO to the end consumer is now transforming into a multi-directional flow. Even within the consumers are going to share the electricity amongst themselves, trade amongst themselves, which is called local energy market, which we'll focus on my next slides. So these are some of the emerging additional roles of the DSOs. And just to stress out that that the DER's proliferation cannot happen in a seamless way unless and until the DISCOMs or the DSOs transform to that way. So this institutional transformation is very important, and that has been recognized in these legal policy and regulatory initiatives which have been taken in India, for example. So the grid code is already having the provision of distributed demand response now, which is to be followed under the resource adequacy mechanism. Also, some of the distribution codes and supply codes in some of the states, they also talk about the DERs, how to interconnect, etc. Like, for example, in Delhi, the rooftop solar, how do they interconnect? The CA technical regulations already talk about that. But then identify these DERs to work seamlessly as a resource is the next step where we are aspiring to go. And that's where the whole concept of DERMS comes into play. Now we are talking about DSO and local energy flexibility exchanges. So local energy as well as flexibilities. These are the two important ingredients of the local energy market, which are going to enable the DER proliferation to the larger scale. But before we move there, we'll talk about something which is already there in the city of Delhi, for example. So what are the regulatory aspects which are already there in the Delhi today, and in some states in India as well? So as per the international experiences in the DER integration and the DSO, there is a need to investigate viable options and market structure for DSO. This is the common learning as we are talking about. So what do we do? So we have to identify what are the areas where the DSOs actually function, and this gives you a bird's eye view where the DSO is located. Okay, so the DSO is going to perform these functions, but then where do the DER come into play? So the DER is coming over here where we have to do the forecasting of the DER as well as the load. That gives us the net load forecasting. We consider the DER in the resource adequacy and also in the ancillary flexibility services. And finally, we facilitate, and the DSOs need to facilitate the local energy market with the integration with the wholesale energy market and wholesale ancillary market. So TSO, DSO coordination. So what is the current status? This slide gives a current status of the local energy market in various countries like US, UK, EU, and Australia. And in India, we see that, okay, we need to go in a way where the DSO or the distributed system operator is, there are 3 or 4 models being talked about in this paper, which is there. You can download it and also read it. This is one of the papers I was talking about. We had a chance to work together. So the distributed network operator, just like in UK, is the owner and maintainer of the distribution network with the same kind of thing. Whereas the distribution service and coordination for the DERs will be done by the DSO. Okay, and the retailers would be there to provide the electricity services, and aggregation of the DER resources, etc., will be done by the aggregator who are going to provide such services. So the role of local level electricity market would be multi-fold. You see, it is not only the grid balancing or managing the entire grid. It is also about the economic benefits to the prosumer. So what is prosumer, as we all know, who is also consuming as well as injecting into the grid, like DER, for example. So these are some of the benefits or the role what the local level electricity markets are going to play, and efficient utilization of DER is one of the foremost goal. It is going to promote more and more proliferation of rooftop solar, even demand response as a resource for the DISCOMs or DSOs, which is monetizable, and the providers of such service, the aggregators or the consumers directly can earn out of it. There is a business model which can be there, and it is a self-sustainable business model. Nobody need to give an extra amount of money, etc. It should be coming from within the benefits. That is the idea. Now, if you see, the 4 pillars of a local energy market include the scheduling, dispatch, flexibility, settlement, and TSO, DSO coordination. So flexibility will include balancing management, ancillary service, and congestion management, whereas the scheduling dispatch, we are talking about the energy or the power. So 2 major components, which are these, and then of course settlement and providing services to the upstream, that is a transmission system operator. So SLDC, RLDC, these are the TSOs in Indian context, and DSOs are the DISCOMs. So these are some of the roles being performed over there. So DERs are going to offer flexibility services directly to the DSO or through an aggregator. So that is how the power is being traded today. You have the aggregators are going to be there at the local level to trade the DERs and with the DSOs. And just like in US, you have a FERC 2222 rule where it talks about that the distributed energy resources can participate in the wholesale market. So that is where the TSO DSO coordination comes into play, because this is very important. The synergetic, behavior of the TSO DSO is important for resource optimization. Okay. Now, there are 2 stages of rolling out the markets in a DSO. First is procurement program. So you need not go to the wholesale market immediately. We go for pay-per-use RFPs where the DSOs float some tenders or RFPs to procure flexibility services or maybe energy services from the grid, from the DERs. That is transitional phase 1, where we are today. Now we are on the verge of where the DSOs would float some RFPs and procure some demand response resource during the time when the grid prices are very, very high, the power exchange rates are very, very high, or the grid is congested. Such experiments are already going on in Delhi, for example. The battery swappers, which are there for 3-wheelers and 2-wheelers, while they are charging the batteries to be used and swapped for the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, they're also being made available to support the grid during the evening peak hours when the grid prices are very, very high. So they dispatch into the grid and relieve the local, because they are connected to the local distribution transformers. So they relieve the local transformers, that is the congestion part we talked about in the LEM, while they also provide energy at a much cheaper rate. So these are the two services they are providing, but this is at a procurement stage right now. So net metering being benefits or net metering, this is being procured. They are not being done in the centralized market or decentralized P2P market. So that is the next phase where we talk about that the P2P or peer-to-peer decentralized market is going to happen, or there is a centralized market being run by the DSO in a particular area, or both. Or maybe there is a centralized market at the national level where these P2P enabled market, decentralized market are also participating. Okay, so these are visualization of how this is going to be and what are the different components, the products traded, financial transactions. In phase one, how is it going to happen? Phase two, how is it going to happen? Phase one is now starting very slowly, especially in Delhi. And you see here the market operator would be a DSO or the DISCOM, as we know here. But going forward, we are looking forward to blockchain-enabled POCs also. Like some POCs have already been done in India as well, in state of UP, in Delhi as well as it has been done, and now it is being proposed in the Delhi solar policy to mainstream the same. Okay, so this is how it is going to be, and then the pricing mechanism or settlement is going to happen pay as bid or other pricing like pegged with the wholesale market, for example. Here it will be two-sided auction, just like in the wholesale market, in the decentralized market, and centralized platform could be DLMP or the other pricing mechanism. So we see a lot of correlation between the wholesale market at the central level in India would mimic at the local energy market as well. And we have ancillary services market also at national level, which is going to mimic at the DSO level. Okay. Now, I was talking about two important regulations which are already there in the country, especially in Delhi. It is already implemented for the last 3-4 years now. In fact, it came in the year 2019. One is community solar or virtual net meterings, where there are a group of solar enthusiasts who do not have roof space. So they come together and there is a common area where the solar can be put up, maybe ground mounted or a roof mounted. And then in the ratio of their contribution, the solar credits are being given virtually into the bills by the DSO. This is already operational in city of Delhi, for example. Okay, that is called virtual net metering or community solar. Second is group net metering. So, so first in the community solar, the entire generation is off taken by the DSO. So that is a kind of gross metering. But then the solar credits are being given to their bills, and that is net metering here. So sort of hybrid happening over here. Okay. Now, at the end of the year, this is being settled at the APPC or average power procurement rate, which is a regulated rate, settled at the regulated rate. Now, there is another model which is called group net metering, where a particular consumer might have multiple metered connection with the DSO. Okay, and one of those connections, he is having a rooftop solar, whereas that rooftop solar is generating surplus more than what is consumed over there. So then that is settled in the bill virtually in the next. And then if something is left, then the next and the next. That is a bucket filling approach. This is called group net metering, where the owner of all the connections is common. And here only the surplus is being settled, unlike here where the shareholding was being settled. And the entire off taken was gross metering. Here it is net metering. Okay. But at the end of the year, if there is a net surplus, that has been settled at a regulated rate. So now the peer-to-peer market or a centralized market is a next evolution of such thing, where that regulated rate will no longer be a regulated rate. It will be discovered through a P2P mechanism or a market clearance mechanism. Okay, so that is where we are going to do. These are some of the details of the GNM and VNM. Now, electricity market evolution, I'm talking about this peer-to-peer, like so far and so forth. We are talking about wholesale competition or retail competition, or the peer-to-peers amongst the consumers only. They are bidding through the aggregators or directly, and then they are discovering the prices. But there are certain regulatory challenges. Now, this is a snapshot of stakeholders of one of the proposed pilots in Delhi, which is expected sometime. where the seller, discom, trading platform, bank, and the buyer, these are the major stakeholders, and this is how the settlement happens. The P2P transaction, this is the energy transactions happening through the metering mechanism, the discom, and then wallet to wallet transactions for the commercial settlement. These are some of the roles and responsibilities of the different stakeholders, where the discom or the DSO can also play the role of owner of the trading platform. Okay, so these are some of the experiments which are being done, and these are some of the technology platforms which are being experimented. For example, Ethereum is one of the platforms which is being used for doing that. So community market, community manager, and there is a market operator. Okay, so the community manager is nothing but the aggregator. So all these small rooftop solar or EV chargers, maybe 5 kilowatt, 6 kilowatt, they cannot individually participate in one, because there are restrictions. For example, in for 2222, if I remember correctly, the minimum participation size, I think, is 1 megawatt. Similarly, in ancillary service regulation in India, they have given that 1 megawatt grid connected entity can actually participate in the ancillary market. Okay, so the aggregation becomes very, very important. The community role of community aggregator becomes very important. The market operator could be the DSO, right? So these are some of the prerequisites for rolling out, which is now being worked upon. So smart meter is already in place. Smart grid infrastructure, which is now being, like I talked about, smart grid flex, etc., which is being talked about and implemented, including the standards. Tariff structure. So what could be the tariff structure apart from the backup charge, wheeling charge, and transaction fee? Tax laws. So individual traders, I mean, individual consumers are not allowed to trade. So that there is a need to, modify this. And because the trading or supplying electricity needs a license. So maybe for individuals, that law or the regulation needs to be modified. So till the time it is modified, sandbox is the one where we are going to work upon. So this is how the market design is evolving over the time for evolving DSOs. So last but not the least, I'll summarize for my presentation. So countries like Malaysia, Thailand have been undertaking multiple P2P energy trading pilots. So has been done in our country, in India, for example, in sandbox environment. Enacted Federal Grid Code in India and ancillary service regulations, which put forth a foundation for the DER integration, the DSO rollout, which is again the way out for rolling out of the market, local energy market and flexibility market, basically. So ancillary services market regulations already provide for 1 megawatt DR capacity to participate in the ancillary market. So wholesale ancillary market I'm talking about, that is what I call TSO-DSO coordination. So aggregation is also allowed. For example, in green energy open access rules by the federal ministry here in India, they have allowed that aggregation can happen up to 100 kilowatt to obtain green energy open access. So that is one-sided, but then similar steps might be undertaking later on, where aggregation will also be allowed to participate in the wholesale market by the DERs, and that is going to proliferate and promote the DERs basically. Implementation of comprehensive LEM entails rollout of the DSO in a phased manner, as we have seen in the previous slides and previous presentation. LEM's role and DSO rollout is critical in DER integration. So what we have seen is, unless and until we have a clear-cut local energy market structure, and there will not be any smooth integration of the DR and rollout of the DR, we will always face rising challenges, not only in this part of the world, but also everywhere. Like, for example, in US also, the rooftop solar and virtual power plant, that is local grid storage plus the solar rooftop, and EV charging as a service to the grid, they are facing a lot of resistance from the investor-owned utilities, which are the load-serving entities. So appropriate business model and local energy market constructs are very, very important. So with this, I'll close my presentation, and thanks a lot for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Abhishek, for the very wonderful presentation. It was very crisp and a lot of information. I think that would be very useful. We have already received some questions from people. So maybe we can address a few questions before we move on. So we have one question from Shahil Singh. who wants to understand how efficient is the real-time communication and data infrastructure currently?
No, great question. So in India, for example, there are two components to this question. First, the infrastructure part. And second is the standard part or communication standard part. Otherwise, what happens is in India, we are facing a lot of issues in smart meter integration. So every OEM for the smart meter is having their own set of head-end systems and set of meters which talk to their own specific head-end systems. There are proprietary communication standards. So lack of universal interoperable communication standard is forcing the DSOs to have multiple HES and multiple OEMs of the meters. So multiple OEMs of meters should be integratable to the single HES. That is not happening. That should not repeat over here. So now the question is, how efficient is real-time communication today? Today we have 4G cellular and also RF mesh. So these are the two major important things in the dense urban areas. Now there are dead bands where we have black holes. The cellular communication doesn't work. Even the RF mesh doesn't work over there in a very seamless fashion. We need what we are talking about in terms of the DER and DSOs. We need robust networks. 5G rollout, which is happening now, is going to be a very important enabler for that. So, and then data infrastructure, if you talk about, yeah, with the emergence of 4G communication already, data is becoming very important, and cloud-based data centers, they have seen a lot of growth in the country like India, for example. So that communication data infrastructure is ramping up very fast. But then when we are talking about rolling out the DER and the DSO at a scale, that I think is missing today. So that has to keep pace. Okay, so how efficient is the real-time communication? This I have answered. Do you want me to ask the next one? I think Mr. Shah had is asking.
Yes, we can unmute Mr. Shah. He may have further questions. He is from Bangladesh. He was previously with SRIDA in a renewable energy department.
SRIDA. SRIDA is doing wonderful job. I met SRIDA people in Manila in 2019. Yeah. So, right. Mr. Haider, a very pertinent question you have. How about harmonics and how do you address harmonics? Harmonics power quality is going to play a very, very important role when you are having so many DERs at multi-levels, and why to forget about cybersecurity. Okay. Now, the idea is like this. There has to be a technical standardization of specifications. Like, for example, today, when you talk about a rooftop solar inverter, a smart inverter, or maybe utility scale solar inverter or a battery inverter, etc., there are already regulations. In India, for example, Central Electricity Authority is already having a regulation which talks about filtration of harmonics, especially third order and fifth harmonic, which need to be adhered to. So the codes should be very, very stringent, and then the codes implementation should be very, very stringent. So ideally, what should happen is every year after the installation happens, you need to verify whether just like you do a pollution and a check control for your IC engine vehicles, right? Periodically, like in India, we do every 6 months, depending upon whether it is BS6 or BS4, whatever standard it is. You have to do every 3 months, quarter, or 6 months, or a yearly. Similarly, you'll have to do the quality check harmonics through PQ meters on a very regular basis. You should not rely on their self-declaration. That is the learning that we have in India.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Abhishek. Maybe
Yeah,
we will.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's very much well explained. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Abhishek. Maybe we will move on to next presentation. We will address further questions in the Q&A discussion. So now we will move on to the next speaker, who is Mr. Nimish Vora. He is director in PwC India, Energy and Utilities Advisory Practice in India. He has about 14 years of experience working with the government, state-owned entities, and other key stakeholders. He has worked in areas of issuing licenses to regulated entities, electricity tariff determination, power procurement, smart grid, and several other key sectors. And he has also been involved in R&D on utility metering. He has played a vital role in designing advanced energy metering products and smart metering architectures to support demand-side management for the countries such as Europe, Australia, India. And he is also a member of the working group for developing smart city under the India Smart Grid Task Force setup under the aegis of Ministry of Power. So we welcome you, Mr. Nimish. Please take us through your presentation.
Hi, thank you very much, Arindam. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are audible, Nimish.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Let me know once it is visible.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
thanks
visible.
everyone, and thanks organizer for organizing this wonderful, I think, talk show. And DER is very important aspect, and I do believe that when world is trying to move for higher share of renewables, if we want to solve problems by creating lesser further problems, distributed energy resources is the way. Otherwise, centralized generation is solving one problem and also adding up to create another problem. So with that, I'll initially just introduce about the firm which I'm representing. I'm representing PricewaterhouseCoopers in India. We are one of the top advisory firms in this segment. And in India, we are celebrating this year as 150th year of our existence in this country. Uh, you can see on the map, it's almost all provinces in the country we have worked in some or other capacity. And the segment of power sector advisory I'm representing is almost 30-year-old, and below all the gears you can see we have shifted all the gears from whole value chain starting from policy to transactions. So every part of it we have been we have been playing some or other role, either working with government or the investor or the regulator or the utility. Now coming straight on the topic, my focus here is what are the policy gaps and barriers when it comes to DERs. So first of all, what is DER? The distributed energy resource is how every country defines. And when I tried looking at those countries which are part of this forum, mostly South Asian countries, and I found that there is diverse definition. Not every country is recognizing it uniformly. So then I tried of, let's say, classifying DERs as per their capacity size. So there are micro DERs, mini DERs, small, medium, and large distributed RE sources. So when I say large, but it is still distributed. So you can see based on the capacity sizing, only couple of kilowatt to up to 10 kilowatt, up to 1 megawatt, 1 to 5 megawatt, and beyond 5 megawatt. These are the brackets. Most prevalent has been solar PV because A, it is inexpensive, and second, it is more uniformly spread out resource as compared to wind, which is very location specific, or hydro, which is also very terrain specific, and biomass, which is supply chain specific. But importantly here, you can see it's not only about the technology, but also the way technology is configured that is defining the application. So rooftop solar widely understood, but then there are remote places wherein the PV system house, I would say PV home systems with battery or maybe a DC circuitry along with that. Those form a part of distributed energy resource. Same way, hydro, we have flavor of that from micro, mini to small hydro, various megawatt capacities. Wind projects, a turbine by itself would be of a couple of megawatts, and few turbines, the groups of that. So distributed parks of wind, those are also classified as distributed RE in China. So those are very unique configuration. In India, we also have a segment on waste to energy or a biopower related segment. So they are also in the couple of megawatts to up to 10 megawatt kind of a range. And all of them are interconnected at a distributed grid. So anything and everything which is producing power and connecting to a sub transmission level voltages, those are considered as a distributed RE if I have to define it as an overall theme. Coming to the next state on the topic, what are the policy gaps? So when I tried understanding various policy frameworks across the countries, these are four heads I can classify the gaps. First of all, the potential barrier for DRs is a utilities perception. Like one of my earlier speaker, Harpreet and Abhishek both mentioned very clearly, utilities feel DRs as a danger to them, and That's where, though they introduce few things because of the federal or province government's persistent effort, but then it is a reluctant approach to promote distributed RE, because they consider net metering is, let's say, a threat to them. And that's where now we see whole flavor of it. It started with the net metering, wherein the amount of energy produced is directly offset to the utilities bill to that premise. Then it came to net accounting, wherein they are only accounting for that exported energy. So whatever is self-consumed then and there, it is net metered, and whatever is exported, it is considered as monetized credit. So that is another flavor, net accounting, which I've seen in Sri Lanka. Net billing, wherein the export is priced at a different rate and the import is priced at a different rate, and at the end there is a net of given in the accounting terms. So that's a net billing. And then net plus or a gross metering, wherein the whole generation is considered as a distributed generation taken by the utility without any benefit to the premise which is hosting it. So we see whole flavor of it, wherein the intensity of a benefit to the premise owner reduces gradually, and that's where utility end up migrating to, so from a net metering to net accounting or net billing. Also, what I've seen is at times they put capacity size limitation. So technically, the size limitations are needed, but those are needed only to ensure that the distribution infrastructure link which is connecting that premise is capable to handle that flow of power, and the backflow of power is not endangering the upstream system. However, the way limits are imposed is very limiting in some of the cases, because they limit on the sanction load without even considering the load factor of that premise. So that means how much energy that does that premise need, they don't consider, or maybe a percentage of the transformer capacity. Now here the transformer has to be a distribution company's transformer, but in an HT connection, I've seen the utilities end up taking a reference transformer as a in-premise transformer, which should not be the case. Same way, other challenge in the policy side, what I find is a lot of constraints of either ambiguity or some thresholds which are put but not revised on a timely basis. And third thing is there are some significant facilitations which are given, and then abruptly those change, uh, and they end up affecting the systems which are already installed. So abrupt changes. So in this category, first of all, talking about Nepal here, so there are a lot of rules which are not yet fully defined about how the treatment of a premise sourcing renewable power from a third party owned system installed as a DER. Now that whole set of clarity is not there. Also, there are standards when it comes to acceptance of those systems, how they should behave inside, behind the meter, and ahead of the meter. So those ambiguities are there. So a lot of countries have fixed this, but some countries are yet to do that. In Bangladesh, we see net metering is provided only for three-phase connections, not for single phase. Now, if you see from the utilities perspective, the single-phase connections are those one who have lower billing rate or lower chargeability. Now, if they become self-sustainable, it is interest more in the interest of a utility, but it is other way around. So in the quest of restricting things, some things are restricted which is going against their interest. In India, we have seen a very good, I would say, a flood of every state coming out with net metering regulation, government of India coming out with lots of subsidy, but then subsequently those multi-megawatt thresholds of net metering reduced to 1 megawatt and then reduced to only 500 kilowatt. So now the net metering as a concept is still prevailing, but the extent to which it can be implemented is now becoming very limiting. Also, the banking period, some of the states provided that whatever energy is produced and consumed, if there is a part of it which is exported, that export can be offset in this month or this billing cycle, and if not, then move to the next month, accordingly whole year. But then some states have now started reducing that whole yearly settlement to a quarterly one, or even in some cases monthly. So whatever is exported, if it is not consumed in a particular month, at the end of it, it is converted into some monetized value and given offset. So that means if there is a seasonal variation in that area affecting solar production, or the consumption pattern is such that which is seasonally varying, it would be very difficult to transit to net zero in this case, and the dependence on utility would prevail. So these are some of the barriers. From the commercial side, one of the biggest barrier I feel, if the systems are installed in not the capex mode but the opex mode, wherein it is pay as you use it. Some investor is putting money and you are paying only for the utility you are deriving out of it. The challenge is about if the consumer defaults or doesn't make payment in a timely manner, how that is guaranteed, how it should be taken off. So in India, utilities have some legislative power of disconnecting premise if one doesn't make the payment. Same doesn't remain true for the private investor putting a system for which the payment is denied. Same way in Bangladesh, the same challenge is there. However, in Bangladesh, there are some innovations wherein some options are given. I'll come to the next slide on that. Other thing is about pricing on the excess surplus, which is unsettled. So it started in India with this idea of average pool power purchase cost, because those days renewables were costly, power purchase costs were at some particular level, and they were thinking that okay, we allow offset to that. But now it happened, so the renewables have become cheaper. Pool power purchase cost is still dominated by thermal. They are having inflationary pressure, so pool power purchase cost has gone up, and a lot of states have come back that now they will not give an offset at that rate, but they will give an offset at the bulk purchase rate of utility. So utility doing multi 100 megawatt or multi gigawatt renewable energy procurement tenders, whatever rates they discover, those rates are the ones which are referred, or maybe a little markup on those rates while pricing for excess energy. Now, uh, in this method, rather than the pricing, the manner in which the pricing is derived and the manner in which the pricing methodology changes over the years, that poses the biggest risk, because someone has invested believing some revenue stream and the formulation goes completely toppled after a couple of years. New thing which is coming in India and some other places is when it comes to OPEX model, the investor and the consumer are different for distributed RE. They tend to feel it like it's like a third party supply model, and some of the transition charges of the loss of cross subsidy, or maybe unutilized the thermal PPAs, those are charged on the consumers. So they also affect the commercial aspect of DERs. And finally, one thing which we have seen is a lot of countries like Vietnam, India, a lot of them come up with huge subsidy programs or incentive program to start DERs. A lot of systems are installed with a lot of percentage of subsidy in capex. Now these systems, when they are procured, they have a bundled maintenance period about 5 years or 7 years or 3 years. For that, the OEM would provide the service of maintaining it. But the moment that period gets over, the maintainability of that system goes to a big compromise. And we have seen early failures in the life, like year 6 to year 8, most of the system fail in infancy, and the promise of 25 years don't materialize. So this is where the barrier comes, because then that user would not be able to look at DERs the way it used to look earlier. Now, what are the possible way forwards to address this? So first of all, we have to fix this problem of utilities perception. So let's start in a gradual and a small stepwise manner. Let's talk on the segments which are win-win for both, for DER investor as well as utility. So number one, agriculture. In a lot of countries, it is highly subsidized, or it is one of the lowest chargeable class of electricity consumers, and they are also reliant on diesel, like in Sri Lanka, like in Bangladesh, like in India to a great extent. So a lot of irrigation power demand is supplied with diesel fuel generators. So they are not only polluting, but they are very costly, and the cost of fuel they face in far flung rural areas is way higher than the regulated price of petroleum. So offsetting them works a wonder in both the ways. So in India, we have a program called PM Kusum, wherein this particular offset has been factored in. Other is there are consumers who are in remote places. So earlier, the electrification was a focus area, that if you want to provide electricity, grid cannot go there. You need to have a mini grid there. But now, interestingly, in some of the provinces in India, we have found that the grid is supplied there, and now even the utilities are finding the cost of supplying power there is so high that rather than supplying through a mainstream grid, let's move with the local mini grid there. Third segment is there are some consumer classes which are operating only during the daytime. And they can beautifully match with the supply curve of renewables. So why not to offset them with this? So schools, etc., or some public offices. The another initiative which India and Philippines which have done is they have defined a threshold that are consumers with capacity beyond few kilowatts, they can go for green energy open access because they have ambition to become net zero, or they want to have a greener supply of electricity. Now, sizing thresholds, as I mentioned earlier, rather than putting any threshold, it should be dependent on energy which is required by the premise and the connectivity at a particular voltage level, wherein a particular voltage level can absorb power at X megawatt or Y megawatt. So maybe up to 5 megawatt kind of 5 megawatt kind of a system can be connected at 11 kV. So those kind of voltage driven or backflow constraint driven capacity limitation should be put, not the consumer's own connected load driven limitation. Other is for consumer to design all the system, data becomes very important. And I see in most of the country, it's a challenge that consumers don't know about their own demand profile in so much of nuance as their utility knows, but utilities don't share that data with them. So I think in Philippines, it's a great initiative wherein utilities are asked to share the data to a consumer on their request about their consumption profile. Now, commercial aspect, a few things I feel might help this segment well, because this systems are coming at near consumption, so they are avoiding whole value chain loss of transmission and distribution. So a unit offset here is not worth 1 unit; it is worth, let's say, 1.3 units at the generating station in a traditional manner. So why not to give that multiplier effect for their clean energy attribute as well? So the renewable energy certificates which are traded on the exchanges can be given this kind of a multiplier, or maybe utilities obligation to fulfill renewable or procure renewable. So there, rather than procuring 1 unit from a centralized plant, procuring 1 unit from a distributed plant would help meet maybe 1.3 times their obligation to purchase renewable. So this kind of market creating incentives or structures can be developed. Recovery in Bangladesh, I think utilities involvement for recovery is being proposed. So that's a great initiative. And as a fallback arrangement, if a consumer doesn't pay, the same system can supply to another consumer of the same feeder, or utility gives a backstop arrangement that that same system can supply power directly to utility. This kind of structure can help. One thing very important, in a net billing manner, the way export is priced and the way import is priced needs very closer look, because for the imported energy, the whole cost of transmission and distribution and the losses have been factored in, while the exported price has to actually nullify this particular impact. Otherwise, it would have a double charging, that a unit there is worth avoiding unit 1.3 at the source. So the same kind of a price amplification should be given. But at all the places I've seen, there is no such treatment given here. The tariff structures need to be very stable. What happens in some of the country, there are multi-year periods that for this period the feed-in tariff would be applicable. Near the expiry of that period, they come out with another range. But this kind of transitions are to be announced little early in the control period, because from the announcement till the commissioning, this is a gestation period of the asset, which is almost like 1 to 1.5 years. So if the control period is of a 5 year, the next regime has to be announced in the year 3, not in year 5. Otherwise, last couple of years of that control period are actually a silent investment activity. The next part is about operational aspect. The in India, we have the banking given that any exported energy in a net metering regime can be imported with minimal limitation, obviously not allowing offset at the peak energy demand period. But then there are not much restrictions. Some of the states have started coming with restrictions in banking as well. But these are the, I would say, features other countries should adopt. Performance monitoring is very important, and we feel that in order to proliferate distributed renewables, uh, it has to be multi-pronged approach. So that means a lot of vendors have to work together. rather than selecting and empaneling the vendor and then only asking those limited fews to install systems, it should be open market approach, that someone who is qualifying technically is given a free hand to approach market, convince customers, and then install the system. However, then it becomes very important to have vendor performance ratings. So how good is someone's workmanship or the performance history of the previous installation has to be centrally monitored. So it's like something on a Amazon kind of a marketplace. We have a lot of products listed and we have a user ratings, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. So any new prospective buyer would go to the ratings before one marries to a particular vendor. Same should happen in this particular segment as well. Another aspect is on financial aspect. The financial institutions, banks, and majorly the retail branches of these banks, where the distributed uh, energy producer is approaching, they are not well versed with this kind of projects. So in a large scale utility RE projects or large scale infrastructure projects, it's a multi-million dollar kind of investment, and for that the very professional and highly trained project appraisal teams are there. That very selective people come in the assessment. But a small scale products would be assessed by every retail branch of financial institution. So there, I think some dedicated financial products are needed. Some kind of capacity building is needed. And in India, for agriculture oriented solar, they have brought it into priority sector lending. So similar initiatives are needed. However, in India as well, not only classifying under a particular priority sector would help, because there the investment size and thresholds should also be accordingly defined. Uh, Finally, what we feel that what is requiring a relook is the duties, because in some of the cases the countries have import duties on some of the equipment which are needed for the system, and those things make it unviable to install or make this projects there. However, if country assesses that maybe earning from the import duty vis-a-vis that reduction in a duty, ending up installing a system wherein the government itself is the payer for the electricity, would end up saving far more funds than what they earn out of duties. So I understand the sole purpose of duty is not just earning revenue but also to promote local manufacturing. But in few countries the local manufacturing ecosystem, because of several other reasons, is not set to happen. So there the duty reconsideration is one aspect I feel we should look into. And in order to address all these regulatory constraints, there are some ways in which no export configuration of renewables are coming up. However, the local codes and regulations, the processes don't recognize this class of installations. Wherein, if I have a 10 megawatt factory, my base load is 6 megawatt, and I install 5 megawatt solar rooftop, despite my net metering regulation limiting it to only 1 megawatt, should not bother the grid, because I am actually doing something similar to energy efficiency in the eyes of a discom, that my uh, demand from a discom reduces because of some in-house intervention. But those kind of recognitions are not yet there in the codes, so those are to be brought in. So these are all suggestions. Now just couple of case studies. We supported one of the provinces in India. How this
Sorry, Nimish, can we make it little fast? We have another speaker. Sorry.
Yeah, so this
Yeah,
is the last slide. So
sure. Thank
a
you.
couple of case studies wherein the whole set of initiatives what we talked about, if we bring it to the foray, then the kind of cost reduction we have seen. So you can see almost 70 to 80% kind of a cost reduction is done, and a lot of de-risking encourage so many investors also to come. The next one is about concentrated solar city kind of a program wherein multiple initiatives together implemented in a concentrated zone, from a net metered to renewable driven mobility to even solar trees and street lights, vending machines. All of them help in driving the home this point. And a lot of them are recognized by the government of India. One of the most cost effective tariff discovery was also done through that way. So that's all I have for this session. I would be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nimish, for the wonderful presentation, sharing information on various metering policy gaps, comparison, etc., from several countries. That was really helpful, insightful. Maybe we will take up the question after the next presentation as we are running short of time. And we have received some questions. You may also try to address in the chat box, but we will come back to the questions in the Q&A discussion. So I would like to introduce Naveen Nagpal. He is Assistant Vice President at BSES Rajdhani Power Limited. He has experience in techno-commercial professional with more than 17 years of experience in power sector. He has worked towards managing different aspects of extra high voltage transmission projects, and currently leading a renewable department and looking after techno-economical aspects of grid integration of rooftop solar PV systems, BSES and new initiatives. He is also a certified energy manager. Over to you, Mr. Naveen, to take us through the integrating battery energy storage system in the distribution network. Over to you.
Thank you, Anandan. Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Good morning to everyone. Anandan, can I get the controls to move the slides?
Yes, you would now have the control. Can you please try?
Yeah, it's not moving as of now.
Okay. Just give a moment.
You can try now.
No, it's not working for me. Yeah, no. So meanwhile, let me just introduce myself. I am Naveen Nagpal. I am working for BSES Rajdhani Power Limited, and my slide deck would be covering a brief about BRPL or BSES group. Thereafter, I will be discussing about the kind of power portfolio we have and the kind of storage requirements we need to have to implement such sort of renewable sources into our network, and a little about the projects which we have implemented in this space and the learnings we gathered out of the experience of these projects and the way forward. So Anandan, I am unable to move the slides.
So maybe yeah, it's moving now.
Shall I share my screen?
Yes, please. There may be a slight lag, but the slides are moving. Now it's an agenda page.
Let me share my screen. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Ritvik, please give control to Mr. Naveen.
Are my slides visible?
Yes. Yes, Naveen.
So, like in 2002, Delhi Discom was privatized, and Delhi Discom was carved into 5 utilities. So, BSES Rajdhani Power Limited is one of them, and BSES Rajdhani Power Limited is the largest utility in Delhi. And we have our sister concern, BSES Yamuna Power Limited. Together, we serve almost 2/3 of the Delhi in south, west, central, and eastern part. And we have a consumer base of over 4.7 millions now. And in terms of peak demand, last year we met a peak demand of 5,000 megawatt together. And sales, in terms of sales, we procured roughly 18,000 million units of energy to serve our consumers. And this is an important figure to note here, because based out of this figure, we need to decide how much renewable energy we need to procure to meet our renewable purchase obligation. Like every state in India has certain RPO requirements, primarily guided by the trajectory issued by Ministry of Power. Like in Delhi, we have a target of 27% RPO in 23-24. So that means the energy which I procure to serve my consumers, 27% of that energy should come from the RE sources. And when we say that much amount of energy needs to be procured through RE, we need to take care of the variability and intermittency which those RE sources brings in. And in terms of AT&C losses, we are at the single digit now compared to what we got in 2002. We started our journey nearly at 60% of AT&C losses. Now we have touched nearly 7%. So that is the kind of journey we have placed in last 20 years of operation. And as far as consumer base is concerned, our 83% of the consumers are domestic consumers, and 16% are commercial consumers. And balanced consumers are in the industrial, agriculture, and public utilities. And in terms of energy consumption, 66% energy is being consumed by domestic, and 22% energy is being consumed by commercial. And after that, the major energy consumption is by public utilities like DMRC, DJB, etc. And this is the chart just to show the growth in power demand in the last 20 years. When we started our journey in 2002, the power demand of Delhi was around 2,900 megawatt. And the peak demand last year we met was nearly 7,700 megawatt of the entire Delhi. So the demand has grown almost 2.7 times in last 20 years. And this is natural because the consumers are getting more and more appliances at their premises. So per capita consumption is increasing and demand has to go. But the challenging point here is the area is the same, which we had in 2002. In fact, that area for putting up the new network, the area for putting up the new transformers, laying new lines, putting up new poles is getting reduced day by day. So if the demand of Delhi increases at this pace, probably in coming years, we might not get enough space to put our new network. So definitely we need to find out new avenues, new alternatives to meet that demand. Primarily like previous presentations, we discussed about say demand response. So demand response could be one of the initiatives wherein we can shift the demand from peak period to the off-peak period. So that could be one of the interventions. Likewise, we have rooftop solar where we can bring or we can make our consumers self-sustainable. So that will also give a good insight, or I would say good resource for mitigating these peak demands. So likewise, we need to look new avenues, and battery energy storage could be one in those avenues, which I'll discuss in my subsequent slides. So when we talk about distribution business, there is something uniqueness. Like we have to maintain the availability of power 24/7 as per the consumer demand, which we don't know as such very accurately. So we need to forecast, or we need to assess that demand very accurately so that power can be made available 24/7 to those consumers. And the other challenge for the DISCOM is to provide that power at an affordable rate. So that means we have to optimize our power procurement strategies so that power can be procured at a competitive rates, and overall tariff advantage could be provided to our consumers. And the third important challenge is about the accessibility. Being a regulated business, being a distribution utility, we have certain universal supply obligation wherein I need to serve my consumers on continuous basis, irrespective of the location of the consumer. That consumer could be at the far end, but I need to lay my network to serve that consumer. So I need to provide power to that consumer. So load shedding is not an option for us. So we need to augment our networks to the remotest part of our license area. And over to this, the power which we procure should be clean and green power. As we all know the kind of targets we have, GOI is working towards net zero. So we are also working that direction, and power should be clean and green. And we are working very hard on that. And the important challenge, which I said, we need to meet the consumer demand, and consumer demand is quite variable. And we need to assess that demand, and accordingly, we need to procure power through various sources. This slide, I just want to show the kind of demand varies in a single day. The top curve, basically the Delhi load curve of one summer day. So here we can see in a single day demand varies, say from roughly 7,300 megawatt to 4,500 megawatt. So that is the kind of variation in demand in a given single day. And being a distribution utility, I need to assess this demand and schedule my power from other sources. And the other important point here to see is the kind of peaks. We have dual peaks in the summer, and one peak generally coincides with the period of solar generation. So if we have sufficient solar generation, if we promote rooftop solar in a big manner, this daytime peak can easily be catered by way of promoting rooftop solar by the consumers, by putting the solar plants by the consumers at their premises. And the night peak can be mitigated by setting up battery energy storage systems, and that systems could be behind the meter also at consumer premise coupled with solar, or in front of the meter at the distribution scale level at the distribution utility. And the other important point to note here is these peaks occurs only vary for a limited period of time. So let's say out in a given year, this peak occurs say 1 to 1.5% of the time. So for those period, the entire augmentation of network might not be a right decision in terms of lesser utilization of the network, which brings in inefficiencies in the operations and a low load factor on the network. So we should definitely target, we should definitely look for kind of new initiatives in terms of energy storage, providing flexibilities through other means of ADR, behavioral energy efficiencies. Those means we need to definitely target in order to control our peak demands so that network augmentations can be limited considering the space constraints and especially in Delhi, which is a landlocked city. So we are getting into that space where getting an ROW is quite difficult. Everybody says NIMBY, not in my backyard. So everybody wants power, but they don't want any pole in their backyard. So we have to be very careful while planning the network in such a manner so that network augmentation can be minimized and I would say DR supports can be maximized. And this is a very brief power portfolio which we have right now and which is planned. So let me go to the planned portfolio in coming years by 24-25. It is planned to have 42% of RE portfolio into our network. And when we say 42% of power portfolio in terms of megawatt in our network, that will bring variability and intermittency with them. Of course, there are few products now which take care of the intermittency, like we have RTC plants also into our network. We have peak power purchase plants, but of course we have independent utility scale solar, independent utility scale wind projects, which has to be met. Their variability and intermittency has to be met through some flexible resources into our network, like battery energy storage. And over to the large scale procurement, we are also having a large capacity of rooftop solar set up by the prosumers into our license area. So we have already crossed over 112 megawatt as of now. But the major challenge is the lack of visibility of the generation from those plants on real-time basis. So there is a need to have a DRMS platform where all these DRs can be integrated and their generations can be forecasted to have an accurate power schedule from our side. The brief about the projects of the energy storage which we have done into our area. So we have carried out 6 battery energy storage sites at the distribution transformer level and 1 microgrid wherein we have 100 kilowatt of ground mounted solar with EV charging options and with a battery energy storage of roughly 466 kilowatt hour. So these are the projects which we have already implemented into our license area. And primary purpose of these projects were peak shaving of our assets so that we can defer the augmentation of our existing assets for the summer months. And during non-summer months, when our load is already in control, so those periods we can use these assets for the energy time shifting, energy arbitrage. And these projects were commissioned in year 2021, like microgrid project we commissioned in September 21 and standalone BESS we commissioned in December 21. So we have a good experience of almost 1.5 years now of running these projects. Though the project implementation was challenging due to the space constrained areas, as well as these projects were implemented during COVID second wave. So there were some challenges faced during implementation, which I will discuss in my subsequent slides. And all these sites are connected at a central platform, central EMS energy management system, which is placed at our SCADA center. And these sites can be operated kind of a virtual power plant mode. So these are the site-wise capacities at 6 sites which we have implemented. So capacity commitment for each site is given. These are in kilowatt hours, 160 kilowatt hours, 150 kilowatt hours. So these are small sites integrated at distribution transformer level. We have like different kind of meters available, which records the real-time load patterns, real-time energy draw, charge, energy drawn for charging or energy discharged from the batteries through ESS meter. And then we have auxiliary meters. All these meters are communicating with our EMS to take the decisions for charging and discharging. And these are the few of the images below of the microgrid solar project as well as the standalone BESS. And in terms of the software part, we have local level HMIs, local level EMS installed at each site, and then that local level EMS is communicating with the central level EMS through a encrypted virtual private network, through a VPN network. And all the sites are being controlled through the central level, and through central level over SCADA also. We have our EMS integrated into the DISCOM SCADA, which is having a specific protocol of 104. So we are integrating that site into SCADA, and we are operating these sites through central level. And the due care have been taken care for the cyber security measures also. Over to this, all these sites are integrated on the Telegram. That means any alarms or any issues we can easily monitor in the Telegram for real-time operations. These are few of the use cases for which we are using these sites. The primary use case, like I said, peak shaving or valley filling. The bottom curve we can see over here. When we say peak shaving, that means we can set up a threshold, upper threshold of my DT rating. So in case my DT gets loaded beyond the upper threshold, my system comes into mode, my battery system comes into discharging mode, and battery starts discharging so that it can support the loading on my DT. So that means I have contained the loading on my DT to an upper threshold limit. Likewise, we can set a lower threshold wherein I can charge my batteries. That means whenever loading on my transformer goes below a certain set load, my battery will start charging so that it makes the loading on my DT kind of a constant or limit within a given band. So which is an ideal situation for a DISCOM, wherein we want the loading of transformers should be limited within a given band rather than working from peaks to troughs. And the other application is the energy time shifting, which we can see in the top curve, left side. In this curve, we can see there are few lines. So there is one solar curve in the yellow. And we can see the blue curve is the actual load on this particular transformer. So we are serving this load either through solar or batteries, as well as we are charging the batteries during the solar hours. So the green lines in the negative direction, this, if you can see my mouse, this is the charging of the battery. So during the solar hours, we are charging our batteries, and we are utilizing these batteries during non-solar hours to serve our load. So we are using this site to provide energy to our consumers totally through a green energy mode. We are targeting towards that. That means we are serving our consumers during solar hours from solar energy, as well as we are charging our batteries through the solar energy. And during non-solar hours, we are trying to support those consumers through the by discharging the battery energy storage. So in a way, we would like to showcase this. This is kind of a possibility wherein the entire energy can be provided to our consumers a green energy. There are few lessons learned in the entire process of implementation of these projects. So I have divided the lessons into 5 different phases, starting from the design phase to the testing phase, then project management, execution, as well as the operational phase. So if I talk about the design phase, these all sites, like the sizing of these sites were carried out based on the actual loading of my distribution transformers and considering a certain amount of CAGR. Considering a certain amount of CAGR on those sites. So depending on the actual loading, we finalize the sizes of the BESS at each site. And that's why the sizes of the battery energy storage systems at each site were different. So I can say these are the non-standardized sites which we used. So we were having 6 different sites having different ratings of transformers. So this I feel should be limited, or we should consider to have standardized sites for maximum of the sizes. For example, we have 100 kilowatt site, 150 kilowatt at one, 70 kilowatt site at the third place. So if we can standardize those sites and implement at multiple locations, those would be more fruitful in terms of testing, in terms of getting the equipment from the supplier, in terms of maintaining the spares. So standardization is one of the important aspects which we should look for while sizing the battery sizes. Similarly, the other challenge we faced, like we could not put the entire system of batteries, PCS, isolation transformer into one containers due to the non-availability of sufficient space at site. Since these projects are the regulated projects in terms of the regulatory approval, so we got the regulatory approval based out of the condition that we should look for those sites which are space constrained and where we cannot augment the conventional network. So we tried to identify those sites where conventional augmentation was difficult, but we could implement these battery energy storages at those sites by putting the different equipments in different enclosures. So a standard containerized solution could not be implemented at these sites, but yes, the different enclosures could be designed for each of the equipment and could be placed accordingly. And of course, the one of the important learning which I see here is footprint optimization. This is possible based out of the experience. Now we are also in discussion with the system integrator who has implemented. So now they have come up with new design where we feel footprint optimization is possible. So that could have been deployed for us, but of course, being the first of its kind project, we went ahead with the system. But now in coming projects, this footprint optimization is possible. The other learning is the optimization of available space in DT stations by DISCOM itself. That means we have already equipments in place. So whether those equipments can be optimized so that better space can be brought out at the site. For example, we have ACBs placed on the low voltage side of the transformer. So those ACBs are generally placed horizontal, which occupies a lot of space. So if we can design our system in such a manner that those ACBs can be placed, those DTs, those ACBs, excuse me, till 11.
So it's already 11.
So those ACBs can be placed vertically so that we can create better space in our existing stations for such kind of projects. And of course, the one of the important learning which we find the lack of familiarity and execution experience for integrating grid scale, grid connected BESS by the battery supplier, because their main focus or main strength lies in supplying the batteries, in testing the batteries, but they have very limited experience when it comes to the integration with the distribution network. So very limited experience we found, and it took us a lot of time to explain, to get the thing sorted and implement the projects.
Excuse me, Naveen.
Yeah.
Since we are over time, we would like to wrap soon.
Sure.
We are over by a minute. And also I have another request. Maybe we can extend the session by 5 minutes if all the panelists are okay. Maybe at least 1 or 2 questions could be answered.
Sure. Let me just quickly close the slides.
Sure. Thank you.
The other important point is drafting a strong technical specifications, which is one of the important point because there are many small points which generally left out, and those things are being become problematic at a later time. Like simple example I would like to give here in terms of internet connectivity. Like you can specify the the communication between local site to the central site is in the scope of vendor or in the scope of system integrator. But if you don't specify the internet connectivity, later it can be a point of discussion who will provide the internet from site to central level. So those sort of gaps we should try to cover in the technical specifications, and TS should be without ambiguity and with very minimum scope of interpretation. While testing stage, we found limitations in terms of the testing facilities available in India. Those were that was a major challenge or learning we find. And other one is the lack of standard checklist or standard tests, inspection test plans for factory acceptance test, site acceptance test. Those were missing. So those we have to work very hard on. During execution stage, the major challenge I would like to mention here is when we talk about integration or implementation of best project at the distribution scale, those are mostly brownfield projects. Those are not greenfield projects. So we have to work in the vicinity of our existing equipments. And we have to be very careful about the lifeline clearances so that we can work with safety. And the second important aspect is integration about the battery EMS with the SCADA. So those communication protocols needs to be understood in a good manner. And the project management side, the major challenge was about finding the right kind of system integrator, because there were certain qualification requirements specified in the tender document which mandated the lead bidder should be either supplier, either manufacturer of battery or either manufacturer of the PCS, which I feel limited the participation from various system integrators who have the experience of integrating these systems with our network, but without having the manufacturing facilities. So this resulted in kind of dependence on the subcontractors way too much, which resulted in kind of poor project management from the main bidder side. And the last operational aspect challenges, we should be very clear in defining the performance parameters in our technical specifications, especially in terms of say round trip efficiency, auxiliary consumption. And when we say round trip efficiency, whether those round trip efficiencies are only battery efficiencies we are talking of, or battery along with PCS and other balance of equipments, those things should be clearly defined into the technical specifications. And the last slide on the next step we are working on this project is the improvement of the operational phase in terms of the operational, improving the operational efficiency of the system by way of automated the operations in terms of dispatching the batteries based on the real-time market prices of IEX or IEX RTM prices, DAM prices. Based on the forecasting of those prices, we should be able to automate our EMS, and EMS should decide when to charge, when to discharge. Likewise, we are also working on command aggregation, wherein a single command can be given to all the sites, and they can decide which site to discharge at what quantum. So kind of a virtual power plant arrangement, we are working on it. And the third point, we are working towards the wrapping over of the use cases. Like I said, primarily 2 use cases we are working for: the peak shaving and energy time shifting. So EMS should be quite intelligent so that they can decide which kind of service EMS should operate, whether it is right to peak shaving or energy time shifting. So that thing also we are working, and we are also working to integrate all kind of DRs with our existing EMS. And depending on the commercial propositions, we are looking to bring more such projects as an alternative to conventional augmentation. With this, I close my presentation. Thank you. Thank you for your patient hearing. And I'm open to any questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Naveen. That was really insightful. And we are really sorry for running late. We will take a few more minutes to address a couple of 1 or 2 questions from each speaker. So if participants have any question, please raise your hand. We will unmute you. So while you raise your hand, maybe we will ask the questions that we have received already or already we have. The one question we want to ask Mr. Ranpal. So could you provide examples of successful integration of DERs in the power system, and how they improved the resilience during grid disruptions or natural disasters Is there any interesting cases that you would like to share?
Yeah, yeah, sure, Abhinandan. So one of the you can say successful implementation of the DR integration was the project that I just discussed in my slides. We call it as iElectrics. So I mean, in that we try to integrate these technologies, and we try to operate that in islanding mode. Although it was first of its kind for us, where we have integrated the renewable source like solar, then the other storage solutions, which was also part of the solution, and upgrading the conventional network. So although the supply in that area is quite consistent, but we manually simulated the condition that there is a kind of large uh, power outage, and how then in that scenario how that system would respond. So to our observation, it was quite satisfactory, but although it was not perfect, and we modified it accordingly, and we are now quite hopeful that it will sustain and respond as per our requirements in case that scenario appears in the near future. So that was one of, I would like to state that one was it was one of the successful implementations.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ranpal. So I have a question to Abhishek. There was a mention about community solar tried out in Delhi. So what are the possibilities of scaling up or replicating to other areas? What should we do to widely getting adopted across India? What steps or how far we are in achieving this? Do you have any insights, sir?
Yeah. So this is a very nice question. See, community solar, that is virtual net metering. So that concept is very, very interesting and now gaining currency, and would be replicable across India, not only India, but also other countries in the region, for example. So it has been scaled up very easily in the city of Delhi. For example, there are certain locations where there is an agri land is there, and raised solar structures, they have been raised over there. And there is a group of customer which are coming together to invest into that. So there are multiple variants to it. So there is a capex mode also, so they will invest, or there is a resco mode where the third party installer comes in, installs over there, and then these 2 or 3 different consumers who have come together, they sign an agreement, and they pay to them the agreed tariff. Okay.
Right.
And that is how they get the net metering benefit also in the bill of the discount. So because they're all grid connected, so as I explained, so the total amount generated from the solar would be cut off or net off from the import of the grid. Okay, this is virtual net metering. Physically, there will not be any net meter, but it will be set off from that.
All right.
Okay.
Sure.
So this is happening. This is happening, and now in the Delhi solar policy, the new one, there are more refined models, right? So there is a community solar, there is a hybrid resco model as well. So maybe it is in public domain. If you would like, then I'll share with you. You can share with them.
All right. Yeah, sure. That was helpful, sir. Yeah. Next, we have a question to Nimish. So how can policymakers and stakeholders collaborate to overcome these barriers that you have discussed and promote the integration of DERs into the system? Are there successful examples of policy initiatives from other regions? Is there any standout policies which has made a big impact that you would like to share? We would like to know.
Thanks. Thanks. That's a good question. In fact, it's easier said advised than implemented. So I would quote to 2 of the policies which I found were good in terms of the way they came out. First is in 2017, the state of Madhya Pradesh came out with distributed RE, decentralized renewable energy policy. Okay, that was country's first policy on distributed RE segment as a whole, not just talking about a net metering rooftop. Uh, the idea there is about when a policymaker designs something, one has to visualize all possibilities. There are regulations which are enabling or limiting, which would always be the case, but the role of government is to give a guiding signal to the market, and the regulator would subsequently onboard considering the constraints of the sector. So it has to be visualizing a lot of possibilities, activating models. So in terms of distributed RE, the project to a consumer, the kind of interfacing possible, there are 11 business models which it activated way back in 2017. So that is something I would say would be a good role. Second is very recently in 2023, state of Maharashtra came out with a scheme on solarizing agriculture, which is MSKVY 2.0. So there as well, if you see, there are multiple transaction structure, the de-risking measures. More importantly, they are trying to address very complex subjects. So it requires a lot of stakeholders to be onboarded together. So a collaborative approach of defining roles, responsibility, articulating all the challenges which have been faced earlier and how it is being addressed now. And more importantly, taking a consultative approach. So at the start of a policy making, getting the problems, solving, then having again a consultation to bounce off with the ideas and then coming out with something. I think if this is the approach policymakers follow, then market is set to accept it better.
Sure, Nimish. Thank you so much. So we will have one last question to the speaker, Naveen. Naveen, what is the benchmark of battery storage capacity, or does it vary from? Is there any benchmark, or it varies from city to city based on city-specific consumption data or other criteria?
Yeah, thank you for the query. So when we say about benchmark in terms of size.
Yes, in terms of size.
Yeah, so benchmark in terms of size could vary depending on the location also, like whether you are planning to put the BESS at the grid scale, which you are integrating at say 11 kV voltage level or 33 kV voltage level, or you might need to put BESS at the distribution scale level at the low voltage side of say 415 volt. Or primarily, you can also put BESS at the consumer level, wherein you are integrating BESS with the solar, rooftop solar, say a domestic consumer or a commercial consumer having a solar plant of say 20 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt. So they can accordingly size the battery so that it can be integrated with the solar. Likewise, when we talk about the grid scale could be in terms of megawatt scale, because we have a large network to evacuate that power. So benchmark, of course, depend on the kind of voltage level at which you are integrating. Benchmark depends on the kind of location. Benchmark depends on the kind of use case which you are planning to use for this system. For example, if you are looking for deferment of your network augmentation, so at which network you are trying to defer. So depending on that and what is the current loading pattern, what is the current growth rate you are expecting, accordingly you can decide. So benchmark, I would not say there should be any benchmark. It should be DISCOM dependent requirement.
All right. Sure. Thank you so much, Naveen. So we would just close the session. I have a few words to few announcements to make. We will take just one more minute. Ritvik, please go to the last slide. Yeah. First of all, we want to say sorry for extending the session by 15-16 minutes. And it was really a very wonderful session. It was very insightful. There are a lot of information to be shared. We hope it was very helpful for the participants as well. We will share the slide deck and the recording to the network, the people who are registered, and also other members. You can also send additional queries to us to this email ID. We will get the answers from the speakers. So there is an upcoming session that is on 13th of this month that talks on seagrass meadows in Chinese Taipei, and they are going to share their experiences. At the end of this session, there is a very quick 2 minutes survey. So please fill that. That will help us to design our future sessions effectively. And we would like to thank all the speakers and participants immensely for all your patience and being with us for the last more than 2 hours. Yeah, we will stay in touch. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Anand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.